British Prime Minister Theresa May is warning of further measures against Russia over the poisoning of that former double agent on British soil. May's implied threat comes after Russia announced it's expelling 23 British diplomats.
In light of their previous behaviour, we anticipated a response of this kind, and we will consider our next steps in the coming days, alongside our allies and partners.
Russia's move today matches the British government's action earlier this week. For more, let's turn to Dominic Velitis in London. So, Dom, a couple of major developments on this story today. Walk us through them.
That's right, John. Laurie Bristow, that's Britain's ambassador to Russia, was summoned to the Russian Foreign Ministry this morning, where he was told that 23 British diplomats must leave the country within a week. These are diplomats, incidentally, working at the UK's embassy in Moscow, and it is, of course, the exact same number of Russian diplomats that have been told to leave the UK by Wednesday. The UK was also told today, John, that its consulate in St. Petersburg will be closed. So too will the British Council in Russia. And this is an organisation which promotes cultural ties between Britain and Russia. Now, earlier we heard from Theresa May. She was speaking at the Tory Party Spring Forum here in London. Here's how she reacted to the measures that Russia has announced this morning.
Russia's response doesn't change the facts of the matter. The attempted assassination of 2 people on British soil, for which there is no alternative conclusion other than that the Russian state was culpable. It is Russia that is in flagrant breach of international law and the Chemical Weapons Convention.
And Theresa May, John, as we heard earlier, also raised the prospect of further measures being introduced against Russia. She said that the UK would, over the next few days, be considering its next steps after consulting allies. A hint there, perhaps, that we may see some multilateral measures being introduced against Moscow. We know that the US, the EU, Germany, France and several Baltic states have declared their support for the UK, so it's possible we may see further action over the coming days. If we do, expect the Russians to retaliate. Indeed, Russia's foreign ministry released a statement of its own this morning saying just that it reserves the right to introduce further measures in case of other unfriendly actions, again, in its words, John.
Some are calling this a new Cold War and adding to that a warning from British authorities to Russian exiles. What can you tell us about that, Dominic?
That's right. On Monday, the day that Theresa May blamed Russia for the Salisbury nerve agent attack, a prominent Russian exile, businessman and Kremlin critic by the name of Nikolai Glushkov was found dead in his home here in London. And a post-mortem has since found that he had died from compression to the neck, suggesting he may have been strangled. The British police have now launched a murder investigation. And although they say there's nothing at this point to link the killing with what happened in Salisbury earlier this month, the authorities here have now begun to contact other Russian exiles living here in the United Kingdom to discuss their safety as a precautionary measure.
Russia has said that they're willing to participate in this investigation, although today's decision to expel these diplomats is essentially the message is this is what you get. We heard from Russia's foreign ministry spokeswoman, Maria Zakharova, who's often kind of the blunt edge of the Kremlin response. She said that this move comes as Moscow has angrily rejected, of course, these charges that the British government has levied against the Kremlin, saying it's responsible for this poisoning of Mr. Skripal and his daughter. It's reacted with anger to demands that Russia explain itself, saying this is a presumption of guilt without any evidence. They also say, look, we haven't actually been given access to this Novichok, this weapons-grade nerve agent that the British say came from Russia, and which Russia insists it doesn't possess. So, but if you actually go in terms of public reaction to what's happening here, I think there's an assumption by many Russians that 23 diplomats for 23 diplomats, that's normal. That's politics at play. You've seen some expressions of regret, however, over the decision to close the consulate in St. Petersburg and particularly the British Council, which has been a source of much cultural exchange between Russians and the Brits. So I think, but fundamentally, you have to also keep in mind politics might play a role here. Of course, Vladimir Putin is up for re-election tomorrow. Many expect he will win. And this decision today, the Kremlin made no secret of it. It was Vladimir Putin's decision today.